I've been laid off twice. And as a manager, I've had to let people go on my team. And each time taught me something that I didn't expect. So the first time I even encountered a layoff possibility was when I was working at Tesla and I was a engineering manager at the time. I had a team of 20 people and we were going through a rough patch. I mean, if you know the history of Tesla, it went through several rough patches in the beginning, but we were going through a rough patch and they pulled all the managers in the room and they said that this is how many people each of you have to let go from your team. Go look at your list and come back and tell us who that's going to be. Not only was this my first time as a people manager, it was my first time ever being pulled into a room like that and having to make a decision that affected so many other people. And so that was probably one of the hardest things I ever had to do because everybody on my team was a rock star. And I'm like, how am I supposed to choose? But I did, right? When you're forced into a corner and you have to pick somebody, you have to pick somebody. So that was really tough. And then after, so you sat with that for a few days. And then they told you when you had to actually do it. So you pull them into a room and you let them know that they're being let go. And they are literally looking at you like you're crazy. And they're like, is this real? Like the shock on people's faces. And so the next hardest thing that you have to do is then tell your team that so and so is no longer on the team. It was a it show, right? Like for lack of a better term, it was hard for everybody. And so I wanted to share that story because a lot of people are being laid off. It's a pretty rocky season right now in corporate America. And I think when you're on the other side and you're the one being laid off, you don't realize that your manager is having a tough time as well. Because first of all, they didn't know if they were gonna be laid off either. So everybody is just as frustrated in this situation. And so that was the first time that I had to confront the fact that there was this illusion of safety in corporate, right? You went to college, you did all the right things, you studied something that was supposedly a stable career. Nobody was stable. Nobody was safe. And that was the first time I was actually confronted with that and had to sit with the fact that, like, this could all go away. And, like, if no matter how much my manager likes me, no matter how good I am at my job, if he's pulled into a room and has to make a choice, you don't know. It's anybody's call at that point. So that was when I hunkered down and I was like, I have to get some other income. And that's when I started buying real estate. So that's what that first layoff experience taught me that, like, you gotta have some other money coming in. Like, by all means, go get it. You have to figure this out. And so that was the first experience. The next experience, I was actually sitting on the other side of the table. I was fresh off maternity leave. So this was around 2020 where COVID was going crazy. And I was supporting the aerospace industry at the time. And as we all know, flights just disappeared, right? Everything was grounded. The airlines had no money to spend. And so, poof, there went my job. So, what was interesting is that I had just come back from maternity leave. It wasn't even 30 days. I hadn't even been back 30 days. And we were all working from home, of course. I got this random meeting invitation from my manager. And there was a random person on the invite list that I had never seen their name. So clearly I go see who the person is and they work in HR and I'm like, "Oh god, like what's happening right now?" So, yeah, I get on the call and, they basically lay it out that We all know what COVID has done to our industry. Our projects have dried up. We don't have funding, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, we can no longer keep the team on. Your position has been eliminated. And I'm like, okay. I mean, it was not really much I could say. So you get off the phone. And the very first thing I did was because I was cool with some of the people on my team. I'm like, I don't know, did our whole team get let go? Like, was it just me because I was on maternity leave? Like all sorts of things were flooded through my mind. And I text my coworkers, and two of the people that I text, they said they had also been eliminated. So then I knew that, like, okay, it wasn't personal, it was business. So here we are again, and corporate is showing me very clearly that they have to do what they have to do. It's not personal, but they're gonna do what they have to do. And so I think what that situation taught me was to always expect the unexpected, right? The last thing I expected to do was to return from maternity leave and not have a job. That was nowhere on my bingo card at all. And so from that layoff, I was already at home. The world was basically shut down. It took me quite a while to get back into the swing of like looking for work. And I mean, there wasn't a lot of work to be honest, but it took me a while to get back in the swing to even figure out what I wanted to do. I kind of decided that, I had relocated from the West Coast to the East Coast, and I felt like I needed to pivot what I was doing to open myself up to more opportunities here. So so for about 3 months, I tried to just figure out what my next move was gonna be. Then I made a decision, and I decided that, "Oh, there's a certification that I can go get, and it's gonna help me pivot." And so I did the certification. It was a 3-month program, and it probably took me another 2 months to land a job, so now we're up to about 9 months. And at the time, the real estate was doing really well. I mean, the government was handing out money like crazy. We were able to raise rents at the time. It was just, gift and curse, right? My corporate career had gone into the toilet, but my real estate investments were doing really well. So money wasn't a huge stressor, but I knew that couldn't go on forever, right? I knew at some point I was gonna have to buckle down and get another job. So it took me about 9 months to actually pivot. And the big lesson there is that if you want to pivot careers, it will not be fast. There's just so much you don't know. You may not have the relationships, you may have to go brush up your skills on some other industry or topic or whatever. And so that was the biggest lesson there, that don't think you're going to get laid off and go do something that you want to do that you may not have the experience in and expect it to be a quick process. It may take, and that was then. That was in 2020, it took 9 months. We'll get into how long it's gonna take now a little bit later, uh, but when we get into my second, experience being laid off is now fast forward 3 years later. I landed that job 9 months after being laid off the first time. I was coming up on being at that company for 2 years, and it was a decent little gig. I mean, I didn't really have many complaints. Of course, COVID was coming to a close and they were trying to force us all back into the office. And I was like, everybody was, hunkering down, like, we don't want to go, we don't want to go. But I had a legitimate reason. My entire team was remote. Not a single person lived in my city. So I'm like, what am I going to the office to actually do? I'm going to the office to sit on Zoom. Of course, that's exactly what they wanted me to do. They wanted me to come to the office, show face, even though I was not interacting with a single person there. So I think I should have seen the signs that, sign one was they were trying to get us all to come back into the office, and I wasn't the most receptive. Sign two is that my manager abruptly left. My manager abruptly left. And then when they brought in her replacement, I should have seen the signs that he was coming to replace me, that they were looking to trim management layers. And so they brought in this new manager, my new manager. I'm essentially training him, right? He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know the team. He doesn't know what we do. Um, and I think one piece that I left out is that there was an acquisition. So my manager leaves, my company acquires another company, and my new manager is from that other company. So I should have fully expected that there's gonna be some sort of shakeup here because we're making acquisitions, and usually when they make acquisitions, somebody's gonna go. Either the people at from the old company are going or the people from the new company are going. They cannot have double roles. So that's exactly what happened. I go into the office, they wore me down. So now I'm going to the office at least once a week, right? They want us there 3 days a week, but I'm going like once, maybe twice on a good week. And so just a random day, I go in, I'm thinking nothing of it, and I hadn't been there 15 minutes. It's almost like they were watching my badge swipe. I hadn't been there 15 minutes. My manager walks into my office and he says, "Jerry, can I talk to you real quick?" And I'm like, "Sure." I still have my coat on. Like I had just got there. And I walk around the corner to his office and he's like, "Hold on, I need to patch somebody in." And I'm like, "Okay." He calls into a Zoom meeting and HR is on the call. So I don't even see this person. I can only hear them. And that's how they deliver the news that my role was being eliminated. Now, I'm sitting across the table from my manager and he looked distraught. Like, I'm not going to hold you. He did look distraught. He was kind of like nervous, he was fidgety. He really looked like he didn't want to be there. And I know, having been in his shoes, that it was probably pretty it wasn't a great experience for him either. So she delivers the news and she hangs up and he's like, "Jerry, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't know this was coming, blah, blah, blah." Okay, cool. It's been great. Nice knowing you. And he actually was a nice guy. Like we actually did have a pretty cool relationship. He had only been my manager for like 3 months. But anyway, and then so I get up to leave his office and there's literally a security guard standing at the door. There's a security guard standing there to escort me to my office, and I'm like, "What is going on?" Now, this is new for me because we didn't do that at Tesla. The manager, like, you take your person back to get their things, and we walk them out ourselves. So, this whole security thing, it threw me. I was like, "Okay, what do y'all think I'm about to do?" So, he walks me to my office, and he's like, "I need to collect your things." I mean, so I didn't even have time to power up my computer. And so I'm like, at that point, I'm just like, "Okay, y'all doing a lot." So I just hand him my stuff and he walks me to the elevator and that was the end of it. I mean, that was kind of crazy. It totally beat, just being told, via Zoom and having to mail in your equipment. Like I literally got walked out. So that experience was kind of crazy. And when I think back to where my income was at that time, like it was a high income job. Like losing that income hurt, despite the fact that I still had the real estate going. I had bought even more real estate at that point, and at that point I was also coaching, so I was also doing my personal brand on the side. So there wasn't an immediate hit to the income, but I knew that, like, no, this was a high paying job. It was one of the highest paying jobs that I had been able to find in the city, and I was like, "Hmm, that sucks." It's not the end of the world, but that sucks. And so what happened next was I was a little concerned because my major concern was I still gonna get my bonus? Uh, th that company paid the best bonuses I had ever experienced. The bonus was 30% of your pay. So, the bonus is what that's significant. And so I'm like, "Am I gonna get my bonus?" I needed to know that. I'm like, "Okay, you're talking about severance. What's up with my bonus?" And they were like, "Yeah, you're gonna get your bonus. Cool, cool, cool." Well, yeah, I got that bonus, and it was cut in half. And I was like, "Excuse me?" Like, I kind of was depending on that money, and they cited and I still don't know if this is right, but they said that everyone they were saying it wasn't just me, it wasn't people who were laid off. Everyone who was not in the office 3 days a week took a hit to their bonus. And I'm like, "But I don't think you said that before." You know what I mean? You didn't send any warning shots that, like, this could happen, and now this is, like, every day. This is what companies are blatantly saying. But they were not blatantly saying that, and my issue was that this was in 2023. The bonus was for 2022. And so I'm like, "How are you gonna take some of my bonus when coming to the office wasn't even a thing?" So I had a lot of issues with it. Like, it was definitely shady. And I think they know that, like, when, once you've been let go, you're no longer in the company, you're no longer on their payroll. Like, whether it was true or not about the bonus thing, what they really did was took some of my bonus money and gave it to the people who were still there because that's what managers do. You take care of your people. And so it's like, yeah, I'm not going to give Jerry all of her money. I'm going to cut hers in half and give the rest to the people who are still here so that I can keep them here. That's what matters to me at this moment. So it was definitely shady. And I even went down a path of like, should I lawyer up? Like, it's given, should I lawyer up? And I mean, because we're talking about probably someone's whole salary. Like, them cutting that bonus in half was probably a minimum wage salary for an entire year. So I'm like, "Nah, run me my money." So anyway, I had to decide, lawyer up or let it go. And so months are passing and I start to realize that like the longer I sit in this dissatisfaction of, you know, not getting my bonus from them and them calling me into the office to fire me and whatever story I was telling myself at the time, the longer I'm still not getting paid. And so eventually I just had to let it go. I was like, I'm just gonna start putting some feelers out, doing what I know how to do, being an ex career coach. I went ham on LinkedIn, sending messages. By the time I made the decision to move on and I actually just got down to business, it really didn't take me that long to find a job. I would say 4 to 5 months in total. And that includes like a month and a half of like indecision. Like, am I getting a lawyer? Am I about to sue these people? I did not because I got some advice. They were like, if you still want to work in corporate, like you just got to let that go. So I let it go. Uh, But yeah, here we are 5 months later and I'm finally in my new role. Now, like I said, that was 2023. What we need to be abundantly clear about right now in 2026 is that it's taking 9 months to get the job you were already doing. I mentioned earlier that it took me 9 months to pivot. Now, you're lucky if it's taking you 9 months to get the same job you were doing because there's so many people in the job market. And so pivoting, I mean, you can forget about it. You can forget about it or you can double your expectation. It could take you anywhere from 12 to 18 months if you're trying to do something that's anything remotely different from what your resume says and what you can blatantly prove. So I just wanted to put that out there because I know that, if you've been laid off or, you're just scared of being laid off and that's what brought you to this video, a lot of times people wanna take the opportunity while you're not working to kinda go down some dream path or, something that you felt like you would have done had you, had an opportunity to do, and I just frankly think right now is just not the time for that. It's just too tough, and so right now, you have to do what you can do and what someone is willing to pay you to do, and I was talking to some people about it on LinkedIn, and I think, to be even more aggressive, you might have to do the job you were doing 2 or 3 years ago because they know you can do it and you can do it like the back of your hand, and it's like, you just gotta get in where you can fit in, and so I think knowing the timelines of what it takes to get in somewhere, if you were laid off right now, don't pressure yourself, to meet some timeline, the old timelines, right? The 3, 4-month timeline that I talked about from 3 years ago, it doesn't exist. So don't pressure yourself to like, "Oh, it's month 2, I don't have a role," like, let me spiral, into some emotional state. You don't have time for that. And that kinda brings me to my next point of, like, layoffs can affect you. People always talk about the financial effect, but the emotional toll that being let go, not knowing where your income is coming from, not knowing when it's gonna come back, not knowing when you're gonna get a job, not knowing how you're gonna pay your bills for an extended period of time, like, all of that can send you into a very emotional state, which also is detrimental to finding a job because now you're desperate and now you can't show up for interviews, you're not calm, you're not thinking clearly, and so I think that's my number one piece of advice is that the financial toll is coming. You gotta prepare for the emotional toll as well. So what do? Right? There are a couple things you can do. You can, number 1, expect it, right? I just told you how many times I've been involved with a layoff in just a very short amount of time. Expect that it's coming. If it hasn't happened to you, it's coming. It just hasn't happened yet. So expect that it's coming. Save your work examples. I talked about how they literally walked me out after being at work for 15 minutes. I didn't get to save anything from that job, right? Like, not work examples, not projects I had worked on, nothing. So that was a big lesson. It's like, do a quarterly backup, right? Have your stuff. You never know when they're going to come take your equipment. So make sure you have your stuff so that if you got to get out and go interviewing, you're fresh. You have all of your stuff. Prepare financially. For me, I was able to start investing in real estate. I would have a plan B, C, and D of how you're gonna make income if your plan A goes into the toilet, like, start thinking about that now. If you are employed, now is the best time to do that, and I know it's hard that, like, if you're unemployed, it's hard to think about building a business or building your personal brand, but quite honestly, what else do you have to do? You're at home, you look for a job for a few hours a day, you build your own thing the other hours out of the day. You cannot sit idle, like, spending more time in the job search is not gonna make it happen any faster. So, the other thing you can be doing while you're building relationships, whether you're laid off or not. Build relationships with people at other companies, with people working jobs you wanna work, with people working at companies that you like. Consistently build relationships with people because that's the only way to get back employed right now. Everybody's resume looks good because of AI. Everybody can talk a good game in the interview because information is abundant everywhere. They are hiring people who know people. So get your relationship game up. Do not wait until you are out of work to start trying to make relationships with people. And then, like I said earlier, don't personalize any of it. It is not about you. It is about them and their bottom line. And I, as a real estate investor, I get it. If I don't have the money to do something, I don't have the money to do it. And that's what it boils down to with corporate. If they don't have the money to pay you, they don't have the money to pay you, and you don't wanna work for free. So, the relationship has to change. So, and the last thing I want you to remember is that your job is not your identity. Like, this is the most important part. Your job is not your identity. Your job can change at any moment. You should always set aside some time to focus on who you are, who you want to be, what you want to do, because that is your identity. And that is something that you can control. And that's something that can kind of help you through the tough times and keep you out of the emotional spiral because you have an identity outside of that job. It's like, I got let go from work. Okay, but I'm still a real estate investor. Okay, but I'm still a career coach. Okay, but I'm still a mom. Okay, but I'm still running a household. It's like my identity was going to go forward regardless of who who was signing my check or who was doing my direct deposit. My identity was independent of that. And so I think the strongest identity that you can connect yourself with is being someone who goes and gets what they want and what they need. And that means when some outside force changes your scenario, changes things outside of your control, it doesn't matter because your identity is, okay, I'm just going to pivot and I'm going to go get something else that I want and I'm going to make sure I have what I need, right? Like nobody's in control of that but me. That is my identity. And at the end of the day, what you absolutely cannot do is give up. You cannot let anyone or anything take your hope away from you. You got this. And so if you like reading as much as you like watching, you want to go follow me on Substack at Confidence is Cash. And if you want to follow along my journey of learning all things AI, you'll want to follow me here on YouTube at the Prompt Life Podcast. And that's all I have for you guys today. Take care.